Shadi, Hamid, thank you very much indeed. How about Islamist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, for instance? I noticed you didn't talk about them. Are they moderating and reaching out to Israel and the West?
No, they aren't. But are they?
No threat from them at all?
I don't think that Hamas provides a substantive threat to Israel, because ultimately there's no way Hamas can militarily defeat Israel. So at some point or another, Hamas and groups like it will have to accept Israel as a fact and as a reality.
And what do you think the effect of the recent fighting is going to be on political groups who look to Hamas, who look to Hezbollah?
I don't think there will be much radicalization. Islamists have shown time and time again that they're committed to a moderate path in places like Egypt, Jordan, and Morocco.
Except for these groups. Hamas has not shown that. Hezbollah has not shown that.
Well, Hamas is not representative of political Islam at large. This is Hamas and Hezbollah are part of very specific circumstances.
Why? Because it doesn't fit your convenient definition?
No, because
it's still part
these
of
are
political
groups
Islam.
their raison d'etre is a military one. These are groups that were founded to provide a military purpose. They're not political groups like most others in the region.
For heaven's sake, they fought an election and won.
How
much more of a political group can you have than that?
They never renounced violence, and the vast majority of Islamist groups have renounced violence. And if those are the majority of groups,
that's not a definition of an
Islamist
group, is it? It's not a definition of an Islamist group that it renounces violence, is it? There are plenty of Islamist groups that haven't renounced violence.
That's true, but as I said, the majority has gone in a different way. And as I said, Hamas does not provide a threat to the West. It's not a threat to America, and ultimately it's not a threat to Israel.
All right, Shadi Hamid, thank you very much indeed. Now could I ask please Imam Yahya Pallavicini to speak for the motion.
Thank you. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. I personally agree that this motion is very important and that political Islam is a threat for the West, is a threat for the East, is a threat for Islam, is a threat for Muslims and for all believers and citizens, as any kind of misleading interpretation of politics and as any kind of misleading use of religion. For concerns my first point and my first concern, which would be probably the Muslims living in the West, I believe that their strategy, their propaganda, their activities are harming and are a threat for the West, because they are in somehow brainwashing the new generations with a utopia of an Islamist revolution. And on the second line, they are in somehow promoting an alternative artificial society that is leading to ghettoization on the basis of a misleading interpretation of Sharia that leads to parallel and shadow societies. Just to give an example of the Taliban, we do not believe that the holy message of our Prophet allows to destroy the cultural heritage of the Buddhist temples or the Buddhist statues. We do not believe that in any way the message of the Prophet has allowed women to force to be wearing burqas or not having any education or being the object of honor killing. We want to work in order to prevent this misleading use of the religious interpretation and safeguard the correct, holy, spiritual, and peaceful and justice meaning of Islam.
Imam Pallavicini, thank you very much.
Please.
Your threat from political Islam seems a little vague. People are trying to brainwash other people. People are promoting an alternative society. That's a pretty vague threat, isn't it?
I don't think so.
Does this worry you so much?
It worries me because I see...
All around the world, people are promoting alternative societies. People are trying to get their ideas across. It's not always brainwashing, is it? Just because people want to politicize Islam, why is that such a threat?
No, this is misleading the sacred principles of a religion, trying to legitimize violence in order to have a homologation of society.
It's not always promoting violence, is it, political Islam?
Well,
it may be promoting a caliphate, it may be promoting a Sharia law, it may be asking Muslims not to participate in the democracies in which they find themselves. But it doesn't have to be violence, does it?
No, to promote Sharia law out of its context is a misleading use of Sharia as the Sharia courts and the Sharia schools in the Taliban region.
But it's not much of a threat, is it?
No, this is a threat because if you think that women are prevented in education in the Sharia schools in Afghanistan from the Taliban regime, this does not correspond to Islam. This is political Islam, and we do not want those kind of schools, those kind of risks for our women, sisters, and citizens in the West. This is a threat, and honor killing is a very concrete example as any kind of misleading interpretation where apologetic idealization of Islam is actually taking the place of a true spiritual dimension where Islam, as all other religions, have taught believers to cooperate and to be educated and to try to help each other for a better future for humanity.
All right.
And this is not the agenda of political Islam.
Imam Pallavicini, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now please let me ask Sarah Joseph to speak against the motion.
I begin in the name of God, the merciful, the most kind. Assalamu alaikum. Oh, bombs and bogeymen and agendas and monopolies. Aren't they scary? I'd be scared if I believed it. I'm against this motion because simply it creates a simple binary struggle between political Islam and the West, as if there is one single entity which is political Islam and one single entity which is the West. Graham Fuller, vice chairman at the CIA, he said, Islamism includes Osama bin Laden and the Taliban and moderates and liberals. In fact, it can be whatever Muslims want it to be. It can be whatever we want it to be, whatever we choose to define it. I'm English, I'm British, I'm part of the West. I'm not threatened by people for whom faith and politics are connected, richly, passionately. Politics and faith have always played an important part in my life, first as a Christian and for over 20 years as a Muslim. I'm not scared of people who talk politics and religion. I grew up with the words of Gandhi. Gandhi said, "Those who say religion has nothing to do with politics do not know what religion is." Islam has something to say and something to offer in our lives today, including the political arena. Why should we be excluded from it when we have Christian Democrats, when they're allowed and Christians are allowed to bring faith and their religion together? Why should we be excluded? Feeding the hungry is a religious exhortation, but it's also a political act. Protecting the orphan is a religious exhortation. It's also a political act. Speaking for the oppressed is a religious injunction. It's a political act. Speaking to the oppressor, which is what so many of these Muslim groups are actually doing, is a political act. And they are perhaps sustained by their faith in speaking to so many. Reject this motion and instead embrace this opportunity which we have tonight, an opportunity we have to the global political discourse as Muslims, on those terms and generated by our faith, and let us be the change that we want to see in the world.
Sarah Joseph, thank you very much indeed. So you see no threat from political Islam in Britain, where you live?
I can bring you Muslims throughout the United Kingdom who have been inspired by groups even like, who have read Milestones by Syed Qutb, have been inspired by the Muslim Brotherhood, been inspired by Jamaat Islamiyah. They are senior civil servants today. They are engaged in some of the highest positions in the government, some of the highest positions in the media. Just because we have examples of an extreme group like Hizb ut-Tahrir, which is, as Shadi said, really not representative of what political Islam can and is across the world. We see time again people who actually, some of the most passionately engaged people in the United Kingdom who really are engaging with the government have been people who have been inspired by a political dimension to their faith.
And a quarter of Muslims in Britain aged between 18 and 25 who were polled after the July 7th bombings, a quarter of them who said that they thought the bombings were a good idea. That isn't a wake-up call to the effects of political Islam in Britain?
I mean, let's dispute, and that particular survey, I think, was non-representative. If you look at other surveys who have talked about, including in Britain, about engagement... So you don't think,
whether you dispute the survey or not, you don't think thousands of Muslims in Britain supported the July 7th bombings?
No, I do not think so. There are issues of extremism in Britain. There are extremism across the world. But that is why it's not about political Islam. It's not about people who are inspired by that. They're terrorists, and let's face it, let's call them that. Let's reject that. Let's say, absolutely, we don't support that. But that is not what political Islam, that's not is what it's all about.
Okay, Sarah Joseph, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to throw it now open to the audience.